The date is September 14th, 2025, and for years, whispers, rumors, and bold predictions have swirled around a single, explosive claim: the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar and the Vietnamese dong. Tonight, the world holds its breath, because for millions of hopeful investors scattered across the globe, this day was supposed to be the one when dreams of unimaginable wealth finally collide with reality. Some call it the greatest financial opportunity in modern history. Others call it the longest-running scam the world has ever seen. But no matter which side of the debate you stand on, one truth remains: the legend of the dinar and dong has become bigger than currency itself. It has become a story of hope, of desperation, of global power, and of the forces, both visible and hidden, that shape the future of nations. To truly understand how we reached this moment in September 2025, we need to go back in time. Iraq, once one of the richest oil-producing nations on Earth, faced a devastating collapse after decades of war, sanctions, and economic destruction. In the early 1990s, before the Gulf War, the Iraqi dinar traded at more than $3 per dinar. Imagine that for a moment. One dinar was worth more than $3 American. Then came the wars, the sanctions, and the brutal regime of Saddam Hussein. Hyperinflation shredded Iraq's wealth, and by the time U.S.-led forces invaded in 2003, the currency had fallen to fractions of a penny. The dream of a strong dinar had turned into rubble. But as often happens in times of collapse, opportunity hunters appeared. When the U.S. occupied Iraq, stories spread quickly. What if Iraq's currency, destroyed by war, someday returned to its former glory? After all, Iraq had the world's fifth-largest proven oil reserves. Surely one day they would rebuild. Surely the dinar would rise again. And from that seed of possibility grew a global movement. Thousands, then millions of people began buying Iraqi dinars in the hope that one morning they would wake up millionaires. The pitch was irresistible. You could buy millions of dinars for a few $100s, stash them away, and if Iraq's economy reset or revalued to its old pre-war level, you would become rich overnight. For many, it sounded like winning the lottery, but with better odds. That dream spread across military bases, online forums, investment clubs, and eventually entire communities. And alongside the dinar, another name emerged: the Vietnamese Dong. Vietnam, once war-torn like Iraq, had rebuilt itself into a rising manufacturing power. Its currency was weak, but believers argued that a sudden RV, a revaluation, was inevitable. The rumors grew darker, richer, more complicated. Some said global elites were preparing a reset of the entire financial system. Others tied it to conspiracy theories about the International Monetary Fund, the Federal Reserve, or shadowy redemption centers where ordinary people would one day exchange their dinars and dongs for life-changing wealth. And every time the rumors were debunked, they came roaring back, stronger than before. By 2010, entire industries had grown around these currencies. Dealers sold banknotes to hopeful buyers. Conference calls buzzed with secret updates. Self-proclaimed gurus promised intel about the coming RV. For many people struggling in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, this wasn't just an investment, it was salvation. Families mortgaged their homes, maxed out credit cards, and bought bricks of dinars and dongs. The idea of overnight riches was just too powerful to resist. But here's the question that haunted everyone for 2 decades. Was there any truth to it? To answer that, you have to look at the mechanics of a revaluation. Currencies don't just leap in value overnight. For Iraq's dinar to suddenly jump back to $3 per unit, it would mean Iraq's economy instantly surpassing the GDP of the United States. Economists warned it was mathematically impossible. The only realistic way for the dinar to strengthen would be through gradual reform, building the banking system, stabilizing politics, and increasing oil revenues. That takes decades, not days. And yet, hope remained unshaken, because hope is stronger than math. And here we are in September 2025, where the tension has reached a breaking point. Why? Because global events over the last 3 years have added fuel to the fire. Oil prices have surged again after years of instability. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has been openly working on a new gold-backed settlement currency to rival the US dollar. Iraq has been increasing oil exports to China and negotiating with Russia. Vietnam has been climbing global supply chains, benefiting from companies leaving China in search of cheaper labor. And while the US dollar remains dominant, cracks in the system are beginning to show. For Dinar and Dong believers, this is proof. Proof that a financial reset is coming. Proof that these currencies, long dismissed as junk, are about to be catapulted into the spotlight. But before we get to the present moment, we need to explore how this idea spread so far, for so long. Because this isn't just about money, it's about psychology, geopolitics, and the human desire for miracles. Back in the mid-2000s, American soldiers returning from Iraq often carried home stacks of dinars as souvenirs. Some had been told by local contacts that, one day, this will be worth something again. That rumor passed from soldier to family, from family to neighbor, and soon a small underground economy was born. Dealers began popping up online, selling dinars in Ziploc bags, sometimes with certificates of authenticity to make them look more legitimate. Entire websites were devoted to RV intel. On YouTube, self-styled experts gave fiery speeches about the coming wealth transfer. And in chat rooms, ordinary people shared their dreams, paying off debt, buying homes, securing their children's futures, all thanks to the dinar. By the 2010s, U.S. regulators began to notice. The FBI and SEC issued warnings about scams. Lawsuits were filed against some of the biggest dinar dealers for misleading investors. And yet the movement didn't die, it thrived. Because every warning only fueled the belief that they were trying to hide the truth. That they didn't want the little guy to know what was really coming. This is where the story becomes more than just finance. It becomes mythology. A mythology of hidden knowledge, of secret timelines, of ordinary people rising up against elites. And like all powerful myths, it feeds on uncertainty. Take Vietnam, for example. After decades of war, Vietnam rebuilt its economy by opening to foreign investment and becoming a hub for manufacturing. Samsung, Nike, and Intel all moved factories there. As wages in China rose, Vietnam became the next frontier for cheap labor. Its exports surged. Analysts pointed out that while its currency was undervalued, it wouldn't revalue overnight. It would simply appreciate gradually as the economy matured. But Dinar and Dong believers interpreted every news headline, every factory opening, every IMF report, as confirmation that the RV was right around the corner. Now, fast forward to the chaotic years of the early 2020s. The COVID-19 pandemic shattered global supply chains. Inflation ripped through economies. Governments printed trillions of dollars. For Dinar and Dong holders, this was the ultimate proof. If the world's financial system was this fragile, then surely a reset was coming. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, when sanctions shook oil markets, when BRICS leaders began talking openly about de-dollarization, the dream burned brighter than ever, which brings us back to today, September 14th, 2025. On this date, believers around the world tuned into live streams, Telegram groups, and conference calls, convinced that the moment of truth had arrived. Some claimed that banks were preparing redemption centers. Others insisted that the IMF had signed off on a secret agreement. Still others believed that overnight, the world would awaken to news that the dinar and dong were suddenly worth hundreds of times more than yesterday. But as of this morning, the markets remain steady. The IQD still trades around 1,310 dinars per US dollar. The VND remains around 25,000 per dollar. No official revaluation has occurred. And yet the anticipation hasn't died, it has intensified, because for many this isn't just about money. It's about identity, belief, and the hope of escaping a broken system. So, what's really happening behind the curtain? Is there any chance of a dramatic RV, or is it all smoke and mirrors? To answer that, we have to pull apart the web of geopolitics, economics, and psychology. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. As we dive into the forces shaping the Iraqi Dinar and Vietnamese Dong in 2025, the oil markets, the BRICS challenge, U.S. monetary policy, and the reality of what currencies can and cannot do. Because behind every rumor lies a kernel of truth. and behind every truth lies a story powerful enough to change the world. The night of September 14, 2025, presses down with a strange electricity in the air. The world hasn't ended. The financial system hasn't collapsed. Banks have not flung open their doors to instant millionaires clutching stacks of Iraqi dinars or Vietnamese Dong. And yet, if you were to step into one of the countless Telegram channels, YouTube live streams, or Discord groups tonight, you would think history itself was unfolding in real time. Hope is alive, fierce, and defiant. Some believe that official confirmation is only hours away. Others whisper that exchanges have already begun, but only for the privileged few. And in living rooms across America, in apartments in Europe, in small towns scattered from Texas to Toronto, believers clutch their colorful banknotes a little tighter, convinced that at any moment, their lives could change forever. To make sense of this moment, we need to pull back the lens and look at the battlefield where this drama plays out, the global financial system of 2025, because the truth is, currencies do not float in a vacuum. They are shaped by wars, oil pipelines, central banks, and the political ambitions of nations. And tonight, as the clock ticks past midnight, the forces shaping the fate of the dinar and dong are more complex than at any time in modern history. Let's start with Iraq, the heart of this saga. In 2025, Iraq is a nation in transition, teetering between progress and paralysis. On one hand, oil revenues are surging again, thanks to high global prices that have hovered around $95 to $110 a barrel throughout much of the year. Billions are flowing into government accounts. On the other hand, corruption remains a cancer. Entire ministries are accused of siphoning money into private pockets. Electricity shortages leave cities in the dark even as oil tankers stream out of Basra's ports. The central bank has fought to keep the dinar stable at roughly 1,310 per US dollar, using dollar auctions to control supply. But a black market thrives, where dollars command a premium and ordinary Iraqis often pay more than the official rate. This is not the foundation for a miracle revaluation. For the dinar to suddenly skyrocket to $1, or even to a penny, Iraq would need not only financial reserves in the trillions, but also a functioning, transparent banking system trusted worldwide. Instead, most Iraqis still operate in cash. Credit penetration is minimal. Foreign investors remain wary of political instability and militia influence. Iraq may have oil riches, but oil alone cannot rebuild the trust required to transform a currency overnight. And yet, believers see something else. They point to Iraq's deals with China selling crude in yuan. They highlight whispers that Iraq could join BRICS, aligning with a coalition that has openly threatened to erode dollar dominance. They latch onto every mention of monetary reform from Iraqi officials as code for revaluation. In their eyes, the dinar is not just a currency, it is a weapon in a global realignment. That realignment is real, even if it doesn't look the way the RV community imagines. In August 2025, BRICS expanded again, adding new members and pledging to accelerate work on a commodity-backed settlement system. Russia has pushed for oil sales to be priced in gold-linked BRICS notes instead of dollars. China continues to internationalize the yuan through bilateral trade deals. And countries like Iraq, heavily dependent on energy exports, are being courted as pieces on this chessboard. But here's the paradox. Iraq still keeps the bulk of its reserves in US dollars and relies on American oversight to access the global financial system. For all the talk of independence, the dinar is still tethered by invisible strings to Washington and the IMF. If Iraq were to suddenly revalue the dinar at 1-1 with the dollar, the cost of its exports would skyrocket overnight, making its crude prohibitively expensive for many buyers. Domestic chaos would follow. Economically, it would be suicide. Now let's shift to Vietnam. In 2025, Vietnam has become one of the brightest stars in Asia. Its economy is humming, powered by factories producing everything from smartphones to sneakers. As wages in China have soared, Vietnam has been the prime beneficiary, with foreign direct investment pouring in. Its GDP growth continues to outpace most of the world. On paper, it looks like the perfect candidate for a currency revaluation. But here's the key. Vietnam doesn't want it. A cheap dong is the secret to Vietnam's success. By keeping its currency undervalued, Vietnam ensures that its exports remain globally competitive. Every time a multinational corporation sets up a factory in Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City, it does so partly because the currency makes labor costs cheaper in dollar terms. If Vietnam were to suddenly revalue the dong, say from 25,000 per dollar to 2,500 per dollar, its exports would collapse overnight. Millions of jobs would vanish. Growth would stall. For Vietnam, a weak dong isn't a curse. It's a weapon. Of course, the dong has appreciated slightly over the years. A decade ago, it hovered around 23,000 per dollar. Now it floats closer to 25,000, depending on central bank management and global flows. But these are small, controlled moves, not the dramatic overnight reset that RV believers imagine. For Vietnam, stability is more important than spectacle. And yet, within the community of believers, every economic headline becomes a prophecy. A new Samsung plant? Proof the dong is about to skyrocket. A trade surplus? Evidence of hidden strength. A report from the IMF urging reforms? Surely a signal of imminent revaluation. Like the dinar, the dong has become more than money. It has become mythology. But why does this mythology survive when the math is so brutally clear? The answer lies not in economics, but in psychology. For 2 decades, the dinar and dong have thrived as symbols of hope. They attract people who feel trapped by a system rigged against them. Veterans, retirees, the working class, those burned by Wall Street crashes and government bailouts. To hold these currencies is to believe in a secret that the elites don't want you to know. It is to stand on the edge of destiny, ready to be lifted out of obscurity by forces greater than yourself. In churches across the American South, pastors have preached about the dinar as a divine blessing. In online forums, veterans trade stories of Iraqi shopkeepers who swore the dinar would rise again. In countless YouTube videos, gurus speak with fiery conviction, promising that insiders have confirmed the RV is imminent. And each time a date passes without fulfillment, the prophecy is not abandoned. It is renewed. Hope is stronger than evidence. This is the crucible of September 14th, 2025. A night filled not with facts, but with faith. The official exchange rate hasn't moved. Banks remain quiet. But believers are undeterred. For them, the silence is not proof of failure, but proof of secrecy. They argue that exchanges are happening behind closed doors, that Tier 1 participants are already cashing in, and that ordinary holders will follow soon. Screenshots circulate of alleged bank terminals showing astronomical rates. Audio leaks claim that private redemption centers are open. None of it can be verified, but all of it feeds the fire. And as this fire burns, the broader financial world marches on. The U.S. Federal Reserve has kept interest rates high to combat lingering inflation, putting pressure on emerging market currencies. Global debt has crossed $36 trillion, fueling warnings of an unsustainable path. Oil markets swing violently with every rumor of conflict in the Strait of Hormuz. China pushes its yuan deeper into international settlements, while BRICS leaders flirt with commodity-backed trade units. In this environment of instability, the idea of a reset doesn't sound quite so crazy. But here is the truth no guru wants to say aloud. Revaluations don't happen in secret. If Iraq or Vietnam were to reset their currencies overnight, the shock waves would ripple instantly through global markets. Banks would announce new exchange rates. Importers and exporters would scramble. Stock indices would swing violently. You wouldn't need telegram whispers to know. It would be the lead story on every network in the world. And yet, as the hours slip by on September 14th, the faithful remain glued to their screens, convinced that the silence before dawn is the silence before revelation. For them, the dream is not dead. It never will be. Perhaps that is the true power of this saga. Not the dinar itself, not the dong, but the belief that somewhere out there, beyond the reach of Wall Street and Washington, beyond the grip of central bankers and politicians, there exists a miracle waiting to happen. A miracle that ordinary people, not elites, will one day share in, and maybe that is why the story will never die. Because as long as the world feels unstable, as long as inequality grows, as long as people struggle under debt and despair, the dream of an RV will remain alive. It will adapt, evolve, and resurface with every crisis. Tonight, September 14th, 2025, no historic revaluation has been confirmed. But history has been made nonetheless. not by currencies, but by people. By the millions who dared to believe, who built communities of hope, who studied economics late into the night, who held on to brightly colored banknotes as if they were tickets to another life. And maybe, in the end, that's the real revaluation. Not of dinars or dong, but of the human spirit, the ability to take paper and turn it into faith, to turn faith into resilience, and to turn resilience into a movement that spans decades. So as the sun rises on September 15th, the legend continues. The markets remain unmoved, but the dream lives on. For some, it will always be a cautionary tale. For others, it will forever be the promise of tomorrow. And for all of us, it is a reminder that money, power, and hope are inseparably bound, and that sometimes the stories we tell about money are more powerful than money itself. Because in the end, the RV is not just about currencies. It is about us.